Hey everybody, welcome to the daily update for Thursday, April 29th, April 9th, 2026. Big day today. Very, very big day today. We're going to talk all about it. Today's going to be a little bit longer daily update than usual. Sorry, you're just going to have to indulge me. And I'm going to get to why it's a very, very big day in just a moment. Before I do, I want to note two things. First of all, yesterday's daily update nailed it, in which I went through kind of how we've navigated the first quarter and more particularly the last few days. Got a little bit of, I wouldn't say pushback, but I would say some questioning in the trading room. Let me just tell you, I love it. I love it. My intellectual juices are flowing because the great thing about this community is we can disagree, we can question, we can argue, we can ask, but we all do it in a respectful, thoughtful, intellectually honest way. So I got a little bit of pushback, some questioning about the video. And so I'm going to do a AMA related to this on Sunday. And it's basically going to be all about price. What can price really tell us? And also about technical analysis. What is the purpose of technical analysis? What can it do and what can't it do? So keep an eye out for that it's going to be on Sunday because the Saturday cut will go out Saturday. Hence the name, Saturday. Next thing that's important before we get to the very, very big day is I want everybody to think back. Really think back to yesterday, I guess, technically, but also to today, 1 year ago. Yesterday was the low of the tariff tantrum. There it is, right there. Can you believe it's been a year? A year ago today was that massive 9.5% move on the SPX. By the way, remember this day here? Well, see, this was a Thursday, Friday. Remember this? When I look at those 2 days, I still laugh. If you remember, I did that daily update on that Friday, and I said, this is so ridiculous, the selling. Now, I have to laugh. There's nothing else I can do. The reason I want to remind people where we were 1 year ago today is because the narrative from FinTwit, from the chattering class, from the financial talking heads, the narrative was not, forget about getting back to break even for the year. They had written the year off. It wasn't about getting back to break even. It was how far low are we going to go? And nobody had on their bingo card that we were going to end the year up between 18 and 20%, depending on which index you look at. So it's super important to think about that and about the context at that time. How were you feeling emotionally? One of the things we saw a lot around that time was those famous words, right? It's different this time. People were talking about how the American century is over, about how we've lost our way in the world, how we are no longer the economic giant. And I relentlessly maybe even annoyingly, in this period here, was saying that's just not true. That's just not true. It's not different. The reason we're down is different. It always is. But this time is going to be no different in terms of resolution from any other time. Like, I've been doing this since 1985. You know how many once in a lifetime events I've seen since I've been doing this? You know how many times I've heard it's different? It's a new paradigm. How about 87 when we dropped 23% in one day? How about the dot-com implosion? Unprecedented, right? How about the flash crash? Unprecedented. How about the financial crisis? Unprecedented. How about the COVID crisis? Unprecedented. And the tariff tantrum? Unprecedented. I've seen them all. And we always come back eventually. Sometimes it takes longer, but we always come back. If we don't come back, we got bigger problems than what's in our portfolio. And by the way, this is no jingoistic, rah, rah, rah America thing. It is just the fact, right? It is the fact that we always resolve up and to the right. And if you don't believe that, then you are not open to watching for the signals and the signs when we do start that process. And I feel like we might be in a similar situation right now, that we may have seen that bottom right here. And we were hearing a lot of it here. It's different this time. So it's just it's good for perspective to think where you were last year at this time, where the year ended up, and where we could go from here. So, all right. So now let's go to the big day. Very big day. I hope I don't get verklempt here. I could. It's possible. So the reason that we are talking right now, the reason you're looking at my ugly mug and we're interacting, is due to a fateful decision that happened 19 years ago today. I'll take you back a little bit before that, or a lot before that. When I graduated high school in June of 1985, about a week before I graduated, I did my finals. And one of my finals was in English. And I literally remember saying, when I put the final period at the end of that page and turned in my essay, I said, I will never write anything again. That's how much I hated writing. Not just because of my ADHD, not just because of the pain and the friction it took for me to get my ideas on a page. Also, the fact that I'm left-handed, so I would drag my hand across the page and get ink on it. It was just a mess. I hated writing, and I said, I never am going to write again. Fast forward to 2025. I'd been running a business for 20 years, something I started in college with a buddy of mine that grew into a decent business. And one of the benefits of having that business is I was my own boss, so I could trade. So when I was at my desk, I would trade all day long when I wasn't doing business stuff. In 2025, I sold that business. I sold it because I had a kid coming, and I just knew that I would either be a absentee father or I would be a complete asshole father if I still had the pressures of running that business the way I was. It was 6 days a week, 16 hours a day. And so I sold that business, and I sold it in May of 2025 to be a full-time trader. When you run a business, you're always putting out fires. Like I said, 6 days a week, 16 hours a day, just fire. What I should have done is I should have transitioned between selling that business and trading full-time. I should have taken a month off. I should have decompressed and then gone into trading. But what I did was the last Friday that I was obligated to be at that business with the people I sold it to, the following Monday, I went full bore into the market. And I took that same mentality into the market. Always got to be doing something. Always got to be doing something. Because if you're not always doing something, building your business, you're falling behind. So always doing something. And what I ended up doing was I ended up over trading. and I ended up chopping my account up. And I spent a year and a half very, very frustrated in the market, especially since we were going into what would then turn out to be the financial crisis. Unprecedented. At some point, maybe out of pure survival instinct, I said, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing something all the time. Maybe there's lots of times when I should just be doing this or sitting on my hands. Back then, I wasn't mature enough. I don't know how mature I am now, but I wasn't mature enough to understand that that could mean turning off your screens and going out and getting some fresh air and exercising and interacting with people and having hobbies. I just thought, okay, I'll be staring at my screen, but I won't be doing anything. Well, what do I do during this time that I stare at my screen? And I said, oh, I'll start a blog. So I opened up a WordPress account and I started a blog. And this was my very first blog post. And the title of it was, My Daughter Cost Me $2,000 Today. And it's a story I told about, it's basically like back at that time, I've been a stay-at-home dad for most of my kids' lives. And part of my morning routine was dropping my daughter over at my mother-in-law's house so she could watch her during the day. And I was talking about how it was hard to, be around the market during that opening period because I had to get my daughter ready and take her there. My wife was going to LA for work. And how, because I took my daughter, I missed an entry on a stock and it cost me $2,000. But the idea was I didn't give a shit. I would rather be there spending the time with my daughter, being a present father than, sitting there trying to fight for money in the market. So anyway, that was my first blog post 19 years ago today. And that blog post changed the trajectory of my life. In a lot of ways. So I started to write, and it was horrible. It was horrible writing. And I wasn't writing for anybody. It was just going to be for me, just for myself. It was going to be like an online journal. And I don't know how, still don't to this day, but people found it. Like, people started asking me questions because I would post like, here's what I did today. Here's what I'm going to do tomorrow. And people would ask me questions. Well, why did you do this? And what was the mindset around this? And so I started answering their questions and I was like, gee, I don't know. I'm not sure really why I did that. And so I had to kind of question my own process or lack of process and start refining it. And so I got this interaction going back and forth and people were more interested. So I posted more. And at some point, somebody from SFO magazine, Stocks, Futures and Options magazine, which was an actual hard copy magazine, said, hey, can you write an article for us? I'm like, me? Oh, okay, sure. So I wrote an article for them and then another publication and some online publications and Yahoo Finance and all these different places had me writing for them. And then one day I got a call from someone that I'd never met before, out of the blue. Still don't know how he got my phone number, from Phil Perlman, right? And Dr. Phil Perlman said, I love your stuff. I'd like you to write for the StockTwits blog network. Now, remember, at that time, the StockTwits blog network was the big 800-pound gorilla in finance. Who was on the StockTwits blog network at that time? In my mind, financial and writing giants. Howard Lindzen, obviously. Josh Brown was on the StockTwits blog network. James Altucher, Brian Shannon, J.C. Peretz, Jeff Carter. Like, it was a murderer's row of financial writers. And I thought, I have absolutely no business being on that blog network. And so I said yes. I knew I would kick myself if I didn't say yes. And I knew I had to challenge myself. So I joined the StockTwits blog network. And then the opportunities just kept coming in. And then people went from saying, will you write for free? We'll pay you to write. Again, I'm like, what, me? Like, okay. And I just kept writing and building a community and which was mostly on Twitter at that time, somewhat stock tweets. Then at some point that went away. I still maintained my blog. It was on WordPress for a while. Then I turned it to a newsletter on MailChimp. Then I went to Tiny Letter for a while. And then a friend, not a friend, but someone I had interacted with, Erin Griffith, who's the writer for, she writes about startups for the New York Times, announced that she was going to this new thing called Substack because her friend Hamish was starting this startup. And I thought, well, if it's good enough for Erin, it's good enough for me. That was November of 2017. I was the first, one of the first Substacks, but the first financial or stock market Substack. And so I started, brought my Lund Loop, or it wasn't called Lund Loop then, it was called the BC Lund blog. I renamed it the Lund Loop, worst name in the world, and launched it in 2017, built a following, changed it to paid in 2019 to get the trolls and misanthropes out. 5 years ago, we started the trading room, and I still can't believe it. You know, from someone who hated writing, was never going to write once he got out of high school, I feel so honored to be able to share, to have this community, to get the great feedback, the camaraderie that we all have here. It's amazing. And I will tell you, as painful as it may be for you, I encourage everybody to write. It doesn't have to be about the markets. You can just write about anything. I always say thinking is the programming for your brain and writing is the debugging. You really learn what you think when you write. It crystallizes your thinking. If nothing else, there's an app out there called the world's most dangerous app. I think it's, let's see. It's the world's most dangerous writing app. It's free. And what it does is it gives you there's no prompt, sorry. It gives you a timer. And you can set the timer for any amount. I just do 5 minutes. And you have to keep writing. If you stop writing for more than a second or two, it erases everything you've done. And the point is, it encourages you to get this kind of this flowing free thought going where you're not worried about periods, you're not worried about punctuation, you're not worried about how you're formatting everything, and you're just getting your ideas out on the page. It's a great place to start writing if you want to pick up a writing habit. You do it first thing in the morning, you do it at the end of the day. I think writing can change your life. It certainly changed mine. So thank you for being indulgent about that. And I do appreciate everyone here. So let's go to the market. Great day in the market here as we got some follow through. You can see that at the open, we just went sideways for a little bit, but after dipping, we had this move right here. And then once we did that, it was off to the races. You can see the spread on the 20 and the 9 and the 5. And you can see how we handled yesterday's high of day. We busted right through it. A little bit of a pullback, holding the 5. Look at this. We're not closing below the 5 until 9:30 Pacific time. That's some good opening buying. That's some good follow through. You can see that, you know, we got to the 20 here, and we actually went through it for a moment, based, and there was a little bit of danger that we're going to roll over, but we ended up the day pretty close to the highs of the day. You can see that the Qs actually did close near the highs of the day. IWM and Dow were off a little bit. So where does that leave us? Well, let's go through it.